Today we're talking about macro photography and the 3 key steps that I use to compose my images. So I've come down to my local woods and there's a small mushroom just here under this fallen tree. I'm going to show you a simple setup, but then we're going to talk about how you might be able to enhance that image and apply this to your macro photography. If we look at this first picture, it's not the worst thing in the world. However, there's not a lot of contrast within the photo. So how do we start to build that contrast into our photos? The first tip is going to be to have a look at the backgrounds. As you can see at the moment, the subject and the background are the same color, and there's not a lot of subject separation between them because it's quite close between the subject and the background. So to start to provide some distance between the subject and the background, we're going to take a couple of steps to the right. Now you'll see that the background is slightly further away from the subject because the log is no longer directly behind our subject. So there's a nice blurry background starting to be formed. What we'd like to do as well is just try and separate our subject by colour. Fortunately, at this time of year, there's lots of colour around in the form of all these leaves. Now, initially, the leaves that I tried using, they are all quite this darker sort of brown colour, which doesn't stand out from our mushroom, whereas what we're trying to do is develop some contrast. So we're looking for some lighter leaves. Fortunately, there's a beautiful beech tree just over here with some wonderful yellow and orange leaves. So by building these into the background, our subject is starting to pop and being separated from our background. So my next tip is to talk about the foregrounds. Currently the foreground is a rather dark brown colour. So again, we can use our lighter colour leaves to help our subject stand out from the foreground. The other benefit of working with the foreground and the background is that we can start to form a frame around our subject. For example, this shot is currently framing me between this tree and the one behind me, whereas if I move the camera slightly to the left, now there is no framing around me, and your eye will start to wander around the frame a little bit more. Now you don't have to use this technique within all of your photos, but it's just giving you an option that you might want to think about the next time you go out and shoot. So my final tip is to think about lighting. I use this rather cheap mini LED by Ulanzi. It's really great. I use it not only for this, but I also use it at weddings for flat lays and things like that. It's not the brightest light in the world, but you wouldn't expect it to be because it's tiny. But for mushrooms and smaller scale things where you just need a little bit of contrast from the lighting, it's great. It's also wonderful to try and learn how lighting works really, because you've got lots of time with macros, so you can try lots of different angles. That means you can see which sort of lighting setup works best for you in that situation. You might want to try different ones at different times. If you are interested in it, I'll put the link down in the description down below. It'll be an affiliate link, so the channel gets a little bit of money every time you do buy it. Now, the main benefit with having this light is it allows lots of contrast. So we talked about earlier about separating by color. This will be separating by light. So because there's not a lot of spill from this light, because it's not very powerful in the first place, having it close to the subject will allow you to light mainly the subject, maybe a little bit of fill around it, but it will separate from the background and the foreground rather nicely. Just having that little bit of fill light is really nice. So there you have it, 3 easy steps to get you started on macro photography. If you've enjoyed this video, consider hitting that subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next